If you're serious about military history and field survival, this is the kind of knowledge that honestly rarely makes it into textbooks. And it's exactly why you should subscribe to this channel right now and share it with others who care about preserving hard-earned historical truth. Tonight, we're not talking about battles or generals. We're talking about what happened after the shooting stopped, when exhausted men had to close their eyes in jungles crawling with insects carrying malaria, dengue, and filariasis. This is the unseen war that killed and crippled thousands, and understanding it tells us more about human endurance than any victory map ever could. World War II jungle warfare forced soldiers into conditions that stripped away modern comforts almost entirely. In the Pacific, Burma, New Guinea, and places like Guadalcanal, mosquito nets were scarce, insect repellent was often unavailable, and nights were as dangerous as daylight. Yet soldiers still slept. They had to. What follows is not romanticized hardship, but the actual methods men used to survive night after night under relentless biological assault. The first line of defense was exhaustion overriding discomfort. One uncomfortable truth is that many soldiers slept simply because their bodies shut down. After marching, digging, carrying ammunition, and fighting in oppressive humidity, fatigue became a weapon against fear and irritation. Veterans repeatedly described falling asleep mid-scratch, bitten dozens of times before morning. This wasn't bravery, it was physiological collapse. For modern survivalists, the lesson is blunt but valuable. Energy expenditure matters. In a true survival scenario, sleep may come not because conditions are safe, but because the body can no longer remain awake. Planning workloads to allow functional rest remains critical today. Ground choice mattered more than most people realize. Soldiers quickly learned that where you slept mattered as much as how. Low ground near standing water was avoided whenever possible, even if it meant sleeping on exposed ridgelines. Mosquitoes bred in stagnant pools, swamp edges, and muddy foxholes. Units rotated sleep-in positions to higher, breezier ground, sometimes choosing discomfort over disease risk. In practical terms, this is still relevant. When selecting a campsite without modern protection, airflow and elevation reduce insect concentration dramatically. Even a slight rise can make the difference between tolerable and debilitating conditions. Smoke became a crude, but, surprisingly effective substitute for chemical repellents. Without spray, smoke was really one of the few tools available. Small, controlled fires smouldered through the night, using green vegetation, damp leaves, or even coconut husks to produce thick smoke without an open flame. The goal wasn't warmth, but rather insect disruption. Soldiers would position themselves so smoke drifted across their bodies, willingly accepting irritated eyes and lungs in exchange for, fewer bites. For modern application, this technique actually remains valid. A smoky fire placed upwind can reduce insect activity around a sleeping area, though it does require careful fire management to avoid risk. Clothing was treated as armor rather than, say, comfort. In jungle conditions, uniforms stayed wet for weeks, yet soldiers still slept fully clothed whenever possible. Sleeves were rolled down, collars closed, and trousers tucked into boots or socks. Some men wrapped spare cloth around their wrists, ankles, and necks, blocking entry points where mosquitoes fed most aggressively. This is a reminder that coverage matters more than breathability in high insect environments. Modern outdoor clothing often prioritizes comfort, but in extreme conditions, sealing the body can prevent infection, even if it, increases discomfort. Improvised barriers replaced missing equipment. When nets were unavailable, soldiers got creative. Ponchos were rigged overhead as partial covers, not to block insects entirely, but to reduce exposure from above. In foxholes, men carved shallow ledges to sleep slightly elevated, reducing contact with ground insects. Hammocks, when available, were preferred because mosquitoes struggle more in moving air beneath suspended sleepers. Today, even a simple raised sleeping platform or improvised canopy can significantly reduce insect contact when commercial gear is unavailable. Discipline and routine, really helped manage psychological strain. Constant biting was not just a physical problem, it eroded morale, plain and simple. Units developed strict nighttime routines to minimize chaos. Scratching was discouraged, since broken skin led to infection. Guards rotated frequently, so no one endured prolonged exposure while awake. This speaks, I think, to the mental side of survival. Structure reduces suffering. In modern field scenarios, setting rules for sleep, fire maintenance, and watch schedules can preserve both health and morale under harsh conditions. Disease prevention depended on habit, not technology. Even without sprays, soldiers used daily routines to reduce mosquito impact. Standing water near camps was drained when possible. Clothing was dried whenever sunlight appeared. Skin sores were cleaned aggressively to prevent secondary infection. These habits mattered a lot. Malaria incapacitated entire divisions more effectively than enemy fire in some campaigns. The takeaway is timeless, really. Prevention is cumulative. Small actions, repeated consistently, can offset the absence of advanced tools. What this teaches us about survival goes well beyond the history books. World War II jungle soldiers didn't conquer mosquitoes, they endured them. Survival came from adaptation, discipline, and acceptance of discomfort as the price of staying alive. For today's survivalists, historians, and field researchers, this knowledge remains relevant. Whether you're studying historical campaigns or preparing for remote expeditions, the principles remain unchanged. Control your environment where you can, manage your body intelligently, and never underestimate biological threats. If this deep dive added something meaningful to your understanding of wartime survival, subscribe to the channel, share this video with fellow history buffs, and help preserve the lessons written in sweat, sickness, and endurance rather than ink alone.